I'm Juan T. Salter, host of the Here We Are podcast. Podcast is dedicated to exploring topics, history, politics, queerdom, perspective of Black folk and people of color, our American demographic future, geography, some local issues and cultures, and all things Gen X, because I'm Gen X, and whatever else we discover along the nerdy way. We continue with our series of episodes delving deeper into a relevant social political topic of late, queerdom, and specifically the idea that LGBTQ plus people recruit, or as the right wing loves to call it, groom unsuspecting youth into choosing to be queer. Here we are, we're going to turn that fallacy on its head by actually interviewing queer folk themselves. I want to add that these episodes may have been more heavily gendered male. It's because of my circle, so I've been reaching out and expanding. Today, we invited E, white, Gen Z.
Gen X. Oh, yeah, you're right, Gen Z. I was listening to you.
Let's go back with that. Today, we invited E, white, Gen Z, transgender, male chef, poet, and rapper.
Hey guys, I'm E. You don't listen to Juan if you talk about the chef thing, because I just really botched some omelets for us this morning.
We just had a breakfast. I got to have breakfast to do this interview. One of the perks. So, standard question always asked on Here We Are is, how did you get to be here?
So, how did I get to be here in Memphis? So, both of my parents are European Americans, white, and they actually were both born in Manhattan, but had family that was from down south. And so they both ended up down south again later on in their lives. And neither of them had family that was from Memphis, but they both were kind of like the artistic types and very community oriented, and just kind of ended up in Memphis either through work or through lovers, and decided that they really liked it here and stayed.
Oh, very interesting. All right, the big one. Where did you learn, or who taught you to be queer?
So I actually think really the first large exposure I had to queerdom was through anime and manga. So that was like getting really big when I was a kid in like the 2000s.
So wait a minute, you're speaking to a Gen Xer, so you have to fill me in. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so basically anime is like...
So I know what anime is, but I don't know these characters.
Okay, so yeah, I guess... I mean, it's not so much, like, I could name, like, there was one called Princess, and there was a bunch of other ones that were, like, called, like, yaoi or yuri, which is...
Are these Japanese?
Yes, okay. Yes. So, Japanese cartoons and media that had... And yaoi is, like, boy on boy love, and yuri is girl on girl love. And there's also manga, which is, like, the comic books, which was, like, kind of easier to get a hold of in, like, bookstores and stuff. But there's also, so there was a lot of like same-sex loving going on there, and I mean, if you think about it critically, there was also like a lot of fetishization of those relationships and kind of like sexualization and like, you know, weird stuff like that. But it was really the first exposure that I had to just like lots and lots of queer content. And there was also like a big gender bending element in like anime culture too. So that was also something that I kind of had exposure to, and kind of gave me the idea of like, oh, like what if I was a boy? Like what if I was a boy and got to like kiss other boys? And like what if I like, I don't know, like an alien came down and gave me a special potion, and then like all of a sudden I was a man.
And how old were you?
Yeah, so I was probably getting into that stuff when I was around like 9 or 10.
Okay. Who or what role models did you have for queerness?
So one thing that I was reminded of thinking about this earlier was Adam Lambert, who I hadn't thought about in a long time. Okay. But was like a semi-finalist on American Idol, I think, like a really long time ago. And that just really meant a lot to me to see this guy just like wearing glitter and singing and being, I think he's bisexual maybe. Um, and also like I think, there was this series um called, what is it? The City of Bones? No, the Mortal Instruments series. Cities of Bones was the first book, and it also had this gay character in it named Magnus, who was certainly bisexual, and he was like half demon, and I was just like, that's absolute goals to just be wielding magic and be an agent of chaos and kissing
the little
anybody
demon
I want.
part, right?
Little demon. Yeah.
So, and there's nothing wrong. I don't want to say, but there weren't any breathing folks.
Yeah, no, not really. Not really. Okay, I had one friend whose older sister was bisexual.
Okay.
So there was actually some older people in my life. Not anybody that I really knew super well, but like, not like I would say anyone over the age of like 19 when I was younger did I know that was queer. But I did know some people who were a bit older and queer, and like they were often also like alternative in terms of like fashion and interests as well. So like alternative music and like alternative clothes, or like in like the anime scene or something like that. And also like as I got older, maybe like 11ish, I got involved in like the convention scene, which is like anime conventions where people go and they cosplay and stuff like that. And so there I was exposed to people doing cross-dressing cosplay.
All right.
And I would say that was like a big deal for me too. And often those people were queer also in terms of like either like their gender or their love interests and stuff like that.
So what about, let me ask, high school, or did you come across other queer or non-binary folks in high school?
Yeah, my other answer to this was going to be like my friends, like in terms of like who taught me to be queer. I think there was a lot that we did of teaching each other how to do this.
Okay. Describe.
Yeah. So also one thing I was thinking about was Tumblr, and reading a lot about queerness on Tumblr online, and about like the idea of being transgender. And so I had a friend that basically we were like buddy, and our like political and gender journeys have been very aligned. So like we both started realizing that we didn't quite feel like our assigned genders at the same time in like maybe 10th grade. And then around the same time we started getting into socialism, and then a little bit later after that we came out about the same time, and then a little bit after that we both like went further in our transitions and became more like binary. So we did a lot of like talking to each other and sharing resources and stuff like that.
Cool. What term has been more acceptable for you? And I bring this up because over time, terms have changed. Queer, gay, same gender loving, lesbian, bisexual, and now we're adding non-binary, or no label at all. What?
Yeah, so actually for a while I considered myself non-binary when I was first like coming out as transgender. So I was using they them pronouns at the time, and sort of living that way, which was, and it's, I don't even really know how to look back on it and consider it if that like really was how I felt at the time, or if I just didn't feel like I was comfortable enough or like willing to like take the plunge to go to being like a totally like masculine male person.
Okay.
So I was non-binary for a while, and I also, when I was younger, I think I knew I was bisexual at a really young age. I actually, I might be getting ahead of things here, but I actually came out to my mom as bisexual when I was 11.
All right.
And I remember I just had this friend who was just a little bit older than me, and we were at like our fall festival for our elementary school, and she just came in this costume and was just like, I've discovered I'm bisexual. And I was like, bisexual. And she was like, yes, I like both boys and girls. And it was like this just like immediate light bulb moment for me that I was like, oh, me too. I'm bisexual.
Okay.
Like, I just know this for a fact immediately. And there's been times over the years where I've wanted to become more like gay or lesbian or something like that. Um, but I think that might have just been because like I felt like being bisexual wasn't necessarily something that I could just like package up and give to people for them to understand, even though I like just have to admit over the years that's just the way that things are.
Okay. Well, let me ask this question. Follow up. Who is your experience has been more accepting, gay or the lesbian queer community?
Of me? Um that's kind of hard to say, but I would say probably the in quotes lesbian community just because like I was I grew up as a like little girl, I suppose, and so that was mostly who I spent time with. Um, so just like a lot of people who were like assigned female at birth, which I really hate even saying that because I feel like it makes me feel kind of dysphoric to talk about it, but just like in terms of like where people have like come from or where people have ended up, there's just been a lot of like non-binary or like that kind of like girl historical situation that I think maybe just like if I could imagine perhaps just like that experience of like marginalization gender wise kind of leads to more um I would say like flexibility or like nuance to a person's identity.
Well, in my opinion, way too male oriented. Just way too male oriented. And that's Juan's opinion. That's a lot of the sources that were so pushed towards the whole society towards masculine. It's like it doesn't work if you don't have the counterbalance of it.
Yeah.
How did you come out? You kind of said that a little bit.
Yeah, so the first time I came out, and I've come out a couple times, was I remember it was like I was 11 years old and I was on Facebook IMing this friend that I had. It was actually I call them my first love, my first ever crush, my first ever big crush, and we were just IMing, and I was just like, I'm definitely bisexual, and I just feel like it's inside of me and I need to let it out. And I'm like crying while I'm messaging this person. And it's like 1 a.m. and I go into my mom's room. She's asleep. And I wake her up to tell her through tears that I'm bisexual. And she's just sort of like, okay. That's fine, honey.
Go to sleep.
Yeah, go to sleep. And then in terms of like gender, I came out as non-binary probably after high school maybe, and it wasn't something that I told everyone all at the one time, which is also true for being bisexual. Like there were certain instances where I kind of played it under the radar, although if anyone ever asked me outright, I'd be honest. But in terms of being non-binary, like I must have just been a quiet conversation in the car with my mom, who I guess is who I think of as like my come out basis. It was probably more just like conversational with friends in terms of like, hey, like I'm thinking this might be going on and that I might be interested in this and that sort of thing.
All right. Well, let me do a follow up. What about coming out and transitioning?
Yeah. So I actually was thinking, I kind of forgot this, but it was a really influential experience to me. When I was probably 19, I visited Costa Rica for a few weeks, and I was part of like a Spanish language like school there, like doing some learning. And the teacher of that program was the first person to ever refer to me by male pronouns, which in Spanish is él. and like using the O's at the ends of adjectives and stuff like that,
Instead
which
of
is like,
ah.
yeah. So like, umoroso instead of umorosa and like stuff like that. But um, so that was actually the first time that someone referred to me with male pronouns, and I just remember being like, oh, like this is pretty cool. Like I didn't know that this was like actually really an option for me. And so I think after that, I started being more comfortable, and I was also like doing more. I think it's for me been easier to come out with putting more effort into my presentation to be referred to the way that I want to, so I had like cut my hair really short and I kind of changed what clothes I was wearing and stuff like that. um but in terms of like coming out, like honestly, I have to do it like every day still. Like I don't think I've ever gotten to stop coming out as transgender. It's something that I have to do every day. Um and even just thinking like when I get misgendered in public, I've started becoming more forward about correcting people, which feels like coming out. Even though I think I've gotten to the point where when I correct strangers, they think that they have just misread someone who's a cisgender male, which is preferable, um, but still sort of like, I don't know. I've like, been trying to learn how to do that and like hype myself up to like assert that identity in public, and in interpersonally, it's usually people ask or get the message or something like that.
Okay. Do you have any regrets about your process?
I think that I don't know. It's hard to say. We haven't really talked about this, but I just want to get it off my chest that I've experienced a lot of secret relationships, and like my first girlfriend in high school was a secret relationship, and no one at school really knew we were dating, and her mom didn't know we were dating, and I went through that situation like a few times, and I think that I just, even though I wasn't like really closeted in high school, I kind of wish that maybe I had been more out in a way that could have made other people feel more comfortable being out. Um, and also, I don't know. I mean, I want to say like I wish I'd transitioned sooner or something to or like come out gender wise sooner, but I think just like everything took the time that it needed to take.
Absolutely. We'll cap it off. Do you have any advice or wisdom that you care to share with a younger person that may listen to this podcast?
I think finding your community is really important. And being as open and as out as you can be in what spaces you can be. I personally think that there is so much value to being able to live as you want to live, and identifying publicly the way that you want to identify, and that it has been worth so much to me to do that, and I know it's been worth so much to other people to do that, and also that if the spaces where a person can be comfortable is not everywhere, then that's okay too. And to just sort of really enjoy and revel in the spaces that are comfortable, where you can, wear dresses or hats or pants or, whatever it is that maybe you don't feel comfortable doing with everyone. Perhaps there's still places where you can practice and play and stuff like that. And either ready yourself to do those things on a more public level, or just really enjoy that space that you have.
Well, thank you so much for your insight and being with us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Juan.